It's no secret that there's a lot of money in the criminal underworld. But do you know how much? What was the fortune made by the most famous gangsters during the Prohibition period? And how did the wealthiest criminals of all time get rich? Now you'll find out everything. This is Infinity. And in this episode, I'll show you the 10 richest criminal leaders in history, as well as tell you about the most profitable and wealthy mafias and criminal gangs. Let's go! Frank Lucas. If you've seen Ridley Scott's American Gangster movie, you probably remember the character of Denzel Washington. He played Frank Lucas, a real American gangster who was active in the 20th century. In fact, the film itself is based on the words of Lucas on real events. Frank Lucas became famous for organizing the transportation of illegal substances during the Vietnam War. He did it with the help of aircraft of the American Air Force. Such tactics allowed him to get pretty rich. His fortune was estimated at $52 million. Not as much as many other criminal bosses, but that's a hefty amount. Jose Figueroa Agosto. Jose Figueroa Agosto made his fortune in a similar way. He earned his millions from the drug trade. His fortune was estimated at $100 million. Agosto is the native of Puerto Rico, and he did this criminal activity in his homeland too. At one point, he controlled 90% of all illegal substances trafficked between the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico. With false documents and generous bribes, he remained elusive to the police for a long time, but eventually his luck ran out. In July 2010, he was arrested in a joint operation between U.S. and Puerto Rican law enforcement. Joseph Kennedy. I think you all know John F. Kennedy. JFK is considered one of the most famous U.S. presidents in history. In many ways, he's remembered because of his assassination, which still raises a lot of questions. But not many people know that JFK's father was a criminal boss. Although not 100% proven, Joseph Kennedy is often remembered as a criminal element. He's believed to have been one of the largest alcohol smugglers of the Prohibition era in the States. It was around the same period that he made his first big money. When alcohol was legalized, Kennedy used his mafia connections to influence politics. He eventually became a leading member of the Democratic Party, and his sons later took leading positions in the country. During the Great Depression, Kennedy made his first $100 million in the stock market by actively using insider information and manipulation. And in total, during the entire time, Joseph was enriched by $300 million. By the way, he even outlived his son, the president. Kennedy Sr. died in 1969. Meyer Lansky. Unlike Joseph Kennedy, Meyer Lansky's criminal activity is not to be doubted. He's remembered everywhere as an American criminal. What's interesting, Lansky was not born in America, but in the Russian Empire. He made his startup capital on liquor smuggling during the Prohibition period. Lansky also created the National Crime Syndicate in the United States with Lucky Luciano, another notorious criminal mastermind. Lansky founded a large gambling empire, which had branches not only in the United States but all over the world. Meyer owned large stakes in the casinos. He earned about $600 million and became famous throughout America. Everyone knew about his deeds, but Lansky acted so cautiously that he was formally charged only with organizing illegal gambling business.
Hey, no.
Anthony Salerno. Since I mentioned the Italian-American Mafia, it's worth mentioning such a person as Anthony Salerno. At one time, he was the boss of the Genovese crime family, one of the 5 families that control organized crime activity in New York. Anthony was known by the nickname Fat Tony. It may not be the most formidable nickname, but Tony himself was very formidable and violent. As head of the Mafia, he controlled a large part of New York. The mafioso had the entire Harlem in his clutches and was receiving payments from everyone. This enriched Fat Tony. At a high ebb, his fortune was estimated at $600 million, and in the 80s, he was called the leader of the most successful criminals in America. But still, the most successful criminal in America is rightly considered to be Al Capone. He's the most famous gangster in history, as well as one of the most dangerous and richest. While the Italian-American Mafia controlled New York City, Capone ruled Chicago. Under the guise of a furniture business and a chain of dry cleaners, he was involved in the illegal sale of alcohol during the Prohibition period, as well as in the gambling business. The city was literally subservient to Capone. His organization consisted of more than 1,000 armed gangsters and police officers. Capone himself paid salaries to senior police officers, prosecutors and mayors of districts, deputies of legislative assemblies, and even U.S. congressmen. Practically everyone who blocked his way ended up in the grave. Capone didn't hesitate with his enemies and dealt with them mercilessly. The most unusual thing about his story is that he ended up in jail not for all those horrible crimes, but for trivial tax dodging. So I guess with a fortune of $1.3 billion, he could still set aside some cash to pay his taxes. Griselda Blanco. In this episode, there is a place not only for criminal males, but also criminal females. Griselda Blanco was also known as the Godmother and the Black Widow. The Colombian woman was one of the first to build an illegal business smuggling cocaine from Colombia into the United States. Many believe that she was the very first in this business. She worked, by the way, for the Medellin cartel. I'll return to it later. Blanco conducted her business ruthlessly. She was very cruel and tough in terms of business and ruthlessly dealt with competitors. She developed many smuggling routes and even opened an underwear store that sold kits with special hidden pockets to carry illegal substances. At her high ebb, her income was estimated at $2 billion. In 1985, she was arrested, imprisoned for 20 years in the United States, and after her end of the period and deportation, the Black Widow was eliminated by mercenaries. El Chapo. Joaquin Guzman Loera became known around the world as El Chapo, which can be translated as Shorty. Again, not the most sonorous nickname, but it didn't prevent Joaquin from becoming an incredibly rich and dangerous criminal. He's believed to have made between $14 billion and $26 billion from the sale of illegal substances in Mexico. He conducted operations through the Sinaloa cartel, which he founded. Guzman devised the idea of smuggling the substances across the border through underground tunnels, but he also transported them by planes, boats, trucks, and trains. Although El Chapo had long been among the world's most wanted criminals, he was not immediately caught. In addition, he managed to escape from custody, but justice prevailed. In 2016, he was arrested again. And now, Shorty is serving a life sentence in the strictest prison on the planet. Pablo Escobar. And of course, the leader of this episode is the most famous and richest criminal in history. Escobar was involved in crime at an early age. From stealing, car theft, and racketeering, he moved on to kidnapping and then selling illegal substances. He founded the Medellin cartel, which by the end of 1980 controlled 80% of the entire cocaine market in the world. With this reach, as well as maniacal cruelty and ruthlessness, Pablo Escobar made a huge fortune. It's hard to calculate, but at its prime it was estimated as $30 billion. He had so much money that Pablo's stashes continue to be found in Colombia to this day. In fact, all Colombian criminals obeyed him. Without his permission, no drug dealer could take their goods out of the country. Anyone who disobeyed him or got in Pablo's way disappeared without a trace. The law enforcement authorities chased Escobar for a long time and were only able to eliminate him in 1993. The Medellin cartel ceased operations with Pablo's death, but during his lifetime it was a veritable money-making machine. In the mid-80s, the weekly income of the cartel and Escobar was $420 million, which at the time made it the richest criminal group in the world. Although the cartel is gone, there are still quite a few gangs and mafias with incredible profits operating in the world. Stay tuned to learn more about them. Sinaloa Cartel. Unlike Escobar's Medellin cartel, the El Chapo's Sinaloa cartel continues to operate to this day. It's currently Mexico's largest cartel, accounting for about 60% of all drug trafficking in the United States. The cartel is a group that operates as an intermediary between South American producers of substances and the U.S. market. This geographic location, as well as Sinaloa's history, plays to the cartel's advantage, which earns about $3 billion a year. Although the leader of the organization, El Chapo, has been arrested and is now serving time, the cartel is functioning well. Apparently, the Sinaloa cartel has managed to avoid the bloody and ruinous struggle for the vacated throne that has blighted many other cartels. Yamaguchi Gumi. The name itself is not likely to tell you anything. If so, then you would know Yamaguchi Gumi is the most famous criminal group in the Japanese Yakuza Mafia. The group has been operating since 1915, and during this time it's grown to an unbelievable scale. Now it's one of the largest criminal organizations in the world with more than 8,500 people. This Japanese mafia receives about $6.6 billion a year. The 'Ndrangheta is an Italian organized crime group. It may not be as famous as the Sicilian Cosa Nostra or the Italian-American Mafia, but it's much richer than them. Today, the 'Ndrangheta's annual income is estimated at $4.5 billion, while in 2007 the group earned over $50 billion. Like other criminal groups, the 'Ndrangheta doesn't shy away from any kind of criminal activity and earns money on literally everything it can. But the main source of income is trade in illegal substances. This Italian organized crime group does business with dealers from South America and controls most of the transatlantic market of illegal substances, from which they supply Europe. At the same time, the 'Ndrangheta does business with the Cosa Nostra Mafia and actively supports the Mafia in the States, helping the criminal groups there. That's all, guys. Who do you consider to be the most famous criminal of all time? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and see you later.